Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Holly Mullin, and I am the managing partner at Sterling Law Offices. So, today we are going to be talking about an issue in family law that I think is incredibly important, that I believe factors into just about every single divorce. And it's something we almost never talk about or think about in terms of what goes into a divorce. And we talk about the legal issues and how long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost, and we talk about custody and placement and we talk about alimony. But what I want to talk about is, long before we get to that part of your divorce comes the very first issue, which is deciding whether or not to proceed with a divorce. And, all of these clients that I meet with, or I should say potential clients that I meet with in a consultation, are sitting in front of me in this situation of, I'm starting to think about moving forward with a divorce. And frankly, some of them have been thinking about it for a long time, but they finally made that step to come and talk with an attorney. And so I want to dig into that more because it's super important. It's this critical time when you are making a decision about whether you should leave your spouse, whether that be a legal separation or a divorce. But it's a hugely important decision and worth talking about. And I would say, before you start looking up divorce attorneys, consider looking up a marriage counselor, because certainly I'm not in the business of breaking up salvageable marriages. And so if something can be done, if the marriage can be worked on, it's best to put in whatever it takes to make that decision so that you're certain. And you know what, marriage counseling isn't for everyone. It may not work. It may not be a good fit for situations of domestic violence, so obviously there's a caveat there. But generally speaking, is you want to make sure that you have exhausted the efforts to ensure that the marriage is in fact irretrievably broken, right? So when you are in that stage of contemplating a divorce, start with gathering facts and good information. It can be a little dangerous to just hit the internet. Number one, who knows where the source is coming from? There's a lot out there. And even some of the good sites that have quality advice may not be Wisconsin focused. Keep in mind, family law is state specific. So even if you were to land on a website, our neighbors to the south in Illinois, they have wildly different family laws than we have. So you're going to want to make sure you're getting good information. So what I mean by that is, schedule a consultation with a good family law attorney. That's not intended to be a plug for me or Sterling. I mean, of course, I think we're great, but I'm saying, do your research. Look for firms that practice exclusively family law, because there are firms out there who do a little bit of family law. They'll dabble in it. They may do kind of a lot of different practice areas, and they may not do any of them very well. So you want to find a firm where it's like they have attorneys that practice exclusively in family law. It's too nuanced of a practice to do just a few cases a year. You really need to do it routinely to keep up on the law, to know the players, right? The judiciary and the guardian ad litems. And so finding somebody who does exclusively family law is really important. And then look at their bios, look at their client reviews. Who speaks to you? Who's going to be a good match? Because this is a personal relationship that you're going to be, working with this person for several months, and you're going to want to make sure it's a good fit. So once you schedule that consultation, be prepared for the meeting. Do your homework going into the meeting, which is write down, make a list, whether that's, typed up in your phone or just a handwritten note, so that when you go into that consultation, you have at the forefront exactly what you want to talk about. Some attorneys may try to steer the ship or, drive the conversation in that consultation, but it's your consultation. So make sure you're getting what you need out of it and get those questions answered that are, the burning questions that are keeping you up at night. So on that list, I would encourage you to think about, what are your most worrisome concerns? Your fears about moving forward with a divorce or a legal separation? What are your goals? What's most important to you in this process? And then what are those questions? What are the questions that you just wish you knew, or you feel like you could have better peace of mind if you had answers to those questions, for better or worse? Even if they're not the answers you want to have, it's better to know. So if you have that list with you, it's more likely you'll be able to have a better quality consultation, because it's not lost on me that when I'm meeting a client for the first time, a lot of them are emotional. It's a big event for them because they haven't talked to anybody about the idea of leaving their spouse. I may be the first person they're opening up about this. They're nervous, right? That this is the first time that these personal details are being shared. So having that list can be helpful, just so that you don't lose sight of what you came there to talk about. I would also encourage you to push that attorney for good answers that aren't a sales pitch. Anyone can tell you what you want to hear, but you want to have realistic advice and information coming out of that consultation. So if you feel like you're getting sort of your best case scenarios, like, oh, I would fight for this and we would push for that. It's like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? That sounds like the best case scenario. What's the realistic kind of, where do you think that this is going to land? How do you think my outcome will look? Now, lawyers are not fortune tellers. We don't have a crystal ball, but we should be able to kind of give you this range of a reasonable expectation of what this is going to shape out to be. And that's important that you know that, so that you do have your expectations in line before you dive headfirst into this process. I would also encourage you to ask about process options. Divorce is not a one size fits all. Routinely, we have situations where there's a client and an attorney, and that, attorney represents the client in the courtroom, does all of the negotiations, does the drafting, that's your like traditional representation. But there's also mediation, right? So that instead of you and your spouse having an attorney, you share one neutral facilitator. So that mediator may or may not be an attorney, but they are there to help you with the paperwork and to negotiate agreements along the way. You can also explore the collaborative divorce process. That's a situation where each party does have an attorney that is skilled in the collaborative divorce, where you agree to stay out of court. You agree that you are going to have a negotiated settlement. You are not going to engage the court in like a litigated, contentious setting with a guardian ad litem. So it's essentially agreeing to a private negotiated divorce with the assistance of counsel. Frankly, you have the right to consider a pro se divorce. A pro se divorce simply means unrepresented, where you choose not to have an attorney. Depending on the complexity of your case, I might strongly advise against that, because you don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. But at the same time, it's good for you to know you're not required to have an attorney in the state of Wisconsin to work with you on a divorce. You can represent yourself. So I would encourage you to be thinking about all of those different elements as you're making this big decision. But most importantly, keep in mind that the timeline is yours. I have had potential clients do consultations with me, sometimes 2, 3, even 4 times before they are ready to file for the divorce. I had one client who's near and dear to my heart, whose divorce I finalized just a few months ago. We did 4 consultations over the course of 18 months before she was ready to make that decision. And that's okay. That's her timeline. That's the timeline she needed to make this major life choice. And so I would just implore you to know and to be confident about that no one should pressure this upon you, and you make that timeline when you're ready. Well, I hope this conversation was engaging and enlightening, and I look forward to more family law talk with you in the future.
Getting informed before you file is one of the smartest moves that you can make. But here's what most people miss. Even after they hire a lawyer, they continue to make quiet mistakes that cost them big without realizing it. Watch this next video to see what catches Wisconsin spouses off guard.